Hello, hello, and welcome back to Good Matters, a show all about using business to make the world better. I'm Rachel Parker Chavez, and as you might know, we spent the last several months sitting down with social entrepreneurs and experts on the topic. And that's what's up today, with someone who spent the last several years working with and developing social entrepreneurs, Elisha Avne, Leadership Development Facilitator and Consultant for FieldWork. FieldWork is a community of workers, founders, and leaders creating a better world. They have spaces and startup programs for all stages of business, and Elisha has helped form and lead these programs specifically built for people who are advancing the common good. Elisha is especially brilliant when it comes to the personal development side of things. I'm not naturally a very introspective person, but getting to know and work with Elisha, even in small doses, has really impacted me. And that's why sitting down with her, I wanted to bring that to you as well. So we talk about the authentic self, what that is, and how to find it, and how to bring it to the table as a socially conscious business owner and just as a human, so you can make your most valuable contribution to the world. Check it out.
I was thinking about all the things I wanted to talk with you about. I'm like, oh, your breadth of knowledge is really vast, and so I'm super excited to have you here, or to be here with you in your space. So can you just start off telling us a little bit about FieldWork and what it is and what you guys do here?
Yeah, so FieldWork is a community of people that aspire to advance the common good. And so we get to work alongside of each other, and we get to be in startup programs together. And really it's just all about working next to people that we can all speak the same language. We all kind of are after the same thing. And so we offer spaces for people to co-work out of, and we offer startup programs for people to receive support through practical, spiritual, emotional resources that are able to really help them take the next steps on their really awesome ideas that want to advance the common good in the world. And so we do lots of things like that to just really support the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so cool. So how did you find yourself here? Like, give us a little background about how you got here, and this is such a cool organization to be a part of. What's your story of how you arrived at FieldWork?
Yeah, so through college, I had always been drawn to nonprofit work and working with organizations that were just really doing great things in the world. And I was doing, program assistance and organizing volunteer summer programs and galas and events and all sorts of things to really help the nonprofits. And through that, found myself at a social enterprise shortly after that as a program assistant campaign manager, where I was building campaigns to raise funding and awareness for the world's greatest causes. And so again, it was the same kind of really powerful message, really powerful mission. And we were doing really incredible things to raise that funding and awareness for those nonprofits. And in all of that, I started to realize that a lot of nonprofits are cutting themselves short in the way that they're operating and the way that they're thinking about their organization and building their operations. And a lot of for-profits are missing out on really great opportunities to help support nonprofits, or even in themselves be giving in some way and generous with their profits. And so started really kind of getting attached to this idea of social entrepreneurship and enterprises that wanted to seek good and wanted to do more with their business than just make money, and with nonprofits wanting to really operationalize themselves well and be more efficient than I think the stigma tends to be placed on them. And so I found myself here as I met with Jeff and Brandon and was just captivated by their vision for what FieldWork was going to be someday, and the programs that we were going to start and the co-working spaces that we would expand to. And from that, just knew that it gets to kind of bring together my passions for nonprofit and social enterprises together to really help advance them even more. I think it's just really inspiring to work next to someone, know that they're working on something entirely different and disconnected from what you're doing, but at the end of the day, there's still a very common purpose underneath it all. And the fact that we get to turn to one another and say, hey, great job, that was really a cool thing that you did, or an awesome initiative, or a new product they launched, and in any of those ways we get to support the members that are around us. And I think that's just my favorite part of being a part of the FieldWork community, is that it's not just a team of people that work for FieldWork, it's really a whole community of people that are around, and we all have that shared mission.
I love the idea, the language you guys use of building the world's best future together. I think there's something really beautiful, and like you said, what your favorite part is the community and really working together. But I think there's something that we've talked about a little bit of really being able to approach the community and to be able to give your best to the community. You have to come really with your authentic self. And as a social entrepreneur, I think that can be tough. Can you talk a little bit about that and just really approaching it from that side of things?
Yeah, definitely. So as an entrepreneur, there's already added pressure because this is your idea, your thing, this is your endeavor that you're starting, and it kind of all counts on you. And so I think just in that journey alone, there's that pressure that's added, and there's all sorts of inputs and things that are really calling for your attention, decisions you need to make, actions you need to take. And when you add that social piece to it, now there's an extra added component where you have a responsibility or burden to the way that you're giving back into the world, whether that be through a partnership with a nonprofit or you yourself are being generous with your profits in a certain way. And so those added pressures can create environments where entrepreneurs can really get into trouble and really, face the dark side of themselves as they're confronted with those challenges. And so finding the authentic self, to me, is one of the most important pieces. One of the things that we talk about in the leadership component of what we do through our startup programs is to really make sure that you are connected to your authentic self and can understand, as you're in this chaotic, disruptive, really ambiguous environment, do you know yourself well enough and the reactions that you're going to have in certain situations so that you can really navigate them effectively and know that you're going to be able to stay true to your values, stay true to who you are, and make the right decision, coming out of those environments.
Yeah, when you say your authentic self, like what's kind of that look like in this term?
Yeah, so authentic self to me just really means knowing the core of who you are and the values that you stand for, and at the end of the day, knowing what's inside of you and what makes you tick. And so that looks like the behaviors that you have, the reactions that you have, the ways that you think, the way that you feel. And so those all together kind of make up this authentic self. And I think a lot of people can tend to not be in touch with that, not truly know what those pieces are. They haven't done the hard work of really defining what are the core values that you have and hold dear to your heart. What are the things that you believe to be true about the world, that you hold as truth, that really guide and dictate your actions based on the fact that you believe them to be true. And so I think that's kind of what I speak to when I mean authentic self, is really just having an understanding of being able to find that core, really understand it well, and then really accept it and know that you're living from that place. So I think some of that comes down to just really having an awareness of the fact that you do have a shadow self. And so Parker Palmer wrote a book called Let Your Life Speak, and it's just a great book that walks through like vocation and things like that. But one of the things that he talks about is how you as a leader, you as a person, really shape the ethos of everything around you. So you affect the environment around you. And so you have a shadow self and you have a self that can really reflect light, and it can really influence and spread light throughout the environment that you're in. And so the first step in really stepping into that authentic self is finding it, is exploring it, is understanding, hey, I do have a shadow self that may come out from time to time, and this is what it is. And so that awareness really, I think, is that first step in just identifying it, calling it out, knowing it exists, because the awareness of it can often influence the way that you behave upon it the next time.
And then what's the next steps as you're looking at this piece of really coming to your social enterprise or your business or whatever the project you're working on with that authentic self? Like, what is then the goal and the next steps of that?
Yeah, so I think the main goal, as Susan Davis, she wrote a book called Emotional Agility, she talks about creating space between the thought and the thinker. I think that really is the next step, is you have to be able to, in those moments when you're confronted with different decisions, different pressure, different burdens, in that moment, create space between a thought and then you as the thinker, and know that those are two separate things. Because as you're interacting with staff members, a team, a growing team, different environments, different choices, if you're just reacting based on natural and old patterns that you have, then that's where you can get really into trouble with that shadow self. And so after you've identified and gone through the awareness practices of really understanding what is these different components of my authentic self and who am I, and then in those moments when you actually are confronted with something, being able to pause and take a breath and understand, okay, this is what's happening right now in this situation, and this is me and who I am and the things I hold core to who I am, and I'm going to make a decision based on those values that I have.
Yeah, I can really see how valuable this would be as you're approaching this with entrepreneurs. What have you seen from working with people who have gone through this versus maybe people who haven't taken the time to really evaluate this before they're into their entrepreneurial journey?
Definitely. So I've seen it good, bad, and ugly, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And I feel like the before is often that they can be very reactive and quick to react. And so something will come up, an old trigger or an old thing will happen, and they go back into those very automatic and quick responses. And what that does is it leaves kind of a wake around them for everyone else to either have to pick up, or now it's involved them in some sort of a process, and so it's harmed them in some way. And so for someone that's gone through this process, they may still very much have those old reactions, but that awareness and the fact that they've authentically stepped into that and allows them to have an honest conversation with themselves and go back to those people and say, hey, I recognize that this is what took place and this is what happened and it wasn't okay. And then over time, as this is a practice of really knowing yourself and living into your authentic self, over time, as those reactions continue to come up, you're able to create that space between that thought and the thinker and really choose differently and show up in a different way to that situation. And so I've seen it, the whole spectrum of those that were pretty unpracticed with it and they continue just to react and react and react, to those that have really engaged authentically in this process and are more willing to show up in those spaces. Even if they end up making the wrong decision or react poorly, they at least have the awareness and the humility and the maturity to come back and say, hey, I recognize that wasn't ideal and it wasn't really aligned with how I think or feel. And so I'm gonna go ahead and fix this and make a different choice.
Yeah, and that would be kind of the end goal of approaching it that way, or coming to your project that way, is that you're making decisions in line first with yourself and then obviously the mission and vision of your company.
Totally. I think if you have a social element to your organization, then there will come a day when you are put in a hard place with having to make a decision. And I unfortunately witnessed this with a social enterprise that I was part of in the past, where there was a financial decision that needed to be made, and you could make it in alignment with your core values and your beliefs of who you are and the promises and the ethics that you made to these, organizations. And it's a hard spot. I can appreciate the difficulty of that decision, where you're making decisions about real people and real things, and you have these core values that you want to live to, but then at the other end of it, you have these tensions and these burdens and these financial challenges that are really burdening you. And so that decision can become very, very difficult to step into in that moment. And the more and more that you know your authentic self and are committed to living in that space, the better and better those decisions are going to be, regardless of how difficult they are.
That's like a cautionary tale, right, for social entrepreneurs. And looking back on that, is there something what are the key learnings or something that could have been done differently that would help people maybe that are watching, if they find themselves in this sort of same situation in the future?
Yeah, and I don't know if it could have been done differently. I think one of the key learnings that I had was just really this incredible thing that happened between the team, that the team was able to really say, no, we stand for this. We believe in this. This is true to our hearts, and this is a mission that we all feel captivated by and really want to stand for. And so together we were able to stand for it. And so we were able to really fight where we knew we needed to fight and go forward on a mission that we knew was worth going forward on. And so at the end of the day, we did what we could with what was in our control to do. And so I think that was like the key learning. And if doing anything differently, it would have just been to appreciate that in the moment, to see what it looks like when a team comes together around a true why and a true core value that we all shared together.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to, as you're growing your team and as you're growing the people you're surrounding yourself with, is making sure that those things are there in place.
Totally.
For yourself as a leader, when you hit those maybe milestones or those road bumps that you're going to have to face. Right.
Yeah, and as a leader, you are the one that sets the pace and the tone and the culture of the organization. And so really these things become very, very important as soon as you hire and start building your team, because everything that you believe and the things that you're acting upon start influencing everyone else around you and become the company culture. And so you have to be mindful of these processes that are taking place within you as you start seeing them play out with a team as well, and kind of see what that looks like. And so for us, it was really cool because as a team together, we got to collectively say, no, this is the value that we hold dear. And it happens to be aligned for all of us. And so we were able to really stand on that. And so unfortunately, there are other times when that isn't the case. And so as the leader, as the person that is maybe getting into that place where they're starting to build and grow their team, to really be mindful of what they are acting upon and what values they have, because then those are what they get to help build the rest of their company culture on.
Yeah. and maybe bring it back and remind them, even the leader, of like, hey, this is why we started, or this is the mission, and like we need to stay focused on it.
Yeah, this is definitely a conversation that we start from the very beginning. And so the way that we take a look at this in the very earliest stages in the idea phase is to look at your personal story. And so we walk our participants through a story map where they map the lows and the highs, and they kind of go through these ups and downs. And that journey is really something that speaks to them about what they hold near and dear to their hearts. And so they can begin to see what values have surfaced based on their experiences throughout their life, and the things that they want to continue to choose to place value on moving forward. And so from that very first program with people with ideas, they're working through their story and figuring out, what is my personal purpose? What is this purpose that I personally have because of my experience that I feel called to really step into developing this idea? And so we help them work through, what's their best contribution to the world? And how is it unique to them? And how are they making meaning for others? And what beauty in the world are they specifically called to celebrate because of their experiences? And so that's really at the earliest phase that we're helping them start to ask themselves these questions. And I think you're never quite done with this journey of discovering your authentic self and really living, and we're never going to be perfect at living into it all the time. But I think it's a constant practice that you have to get into. And so they start with their personal stories in the pilot program, and then even through the launch program, they're continuing to pick up in their personal story to get a deeper awareness and deeper level of understanding in that personal story, now that they've had time to really sit with it, to understand it more, to see it play out in their life. And then we begin more, leadership exercises and different things to really help them discover different parts of themselves and how they function. And as they go up into our growth program and impact program, it's really starting to take a look at, okay, now what is your leadership context within a team? How are you affected as soon as you hire more people? And now you have other personalities and other challenges introduced into the environment. And so it's a continual spectrum that people are really working through to figure out who they are as a person individually, what are the things that are truly core and aligned to their values, and then how does that play out as soon as they start interacting with other people?
Yeah, and you said something there, that just kind of caught my attention of as you add people and as you add, obviously that's going to kind of shift even the dynamic of everything that you're doing. Do you think there's value in having each of your team members, as you add people to your team, doing these same kind of exercises and doing this, even maybe this specifically to your programming of like the story mapping, but even just kind of anything that would help them find their authentic self to bring to the table?
I think that one of the interesting things about the authentic leader is that they're inspiring and they're influencing others around them to engage in that process as well. I think people that I have worked around that I would say I experience them as an authentic leader are inspiring that in others. Other people can feel it, they can see it, and they want it. They want to be that. And so I think that person is really stepping into their authentic leadership in that way as they're guiding and teaching and coaching others to do the same. And that's a part of our programs as well in the startup ecosystem, is that we're hoping that the participants in Impact are starting to identify and recognize what employees do they have that have ideas and aspirations to start something of their own someday. And how can I, as a leader, help begin to build into them and help support them and help guide them and develop them as a leader so that they can then launch out and be, fully authentic in their own journey as an entrepreneur. And so our hope is that we do see these employees rise up through the organizations and then launch out and be able to join our pilot program and come back through the whole ecosystem again of being able to really be fully developed as a leader.
Oh, such good stuff. Okay. So for people who are really stepping into this journey of entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and wanting and identifying with what we're talking about here and wanting to find their authentic self as they begin this journey, what are some practical steps that they can take to really do that as they begin?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things is thinking about these three areas of the way that you kind of are wired. And so there's this book called Wired to Create by Kaufman and Gregory, and they kind of unpack these three cognitive processes, the intellectual, affective, and then aesthetic. And really that's speaking to how do you think, how do you feel, and then how do you interact and see the world around you. And so if you're wanting to engage in this process and really start digging and exploring into who you are, I might start there. Start asking yourself, what are the things that I find myself thinking about? Or how do I think when I'm interacting with the situation. And then notice what are the feelings that are coming up as I interact with those things. And so you can think about a common situation that you might find yourself in and start capturing and really thinking through without any judgment, with full compassion on yourself. This isn't perfect. And so whatever thoughts are coming to mind, whatever feelings are coming up, just really capturing those and understanding those. And then seeing if you can really start to identify, how is it that I see the world around me? The aesthetic. How is it that I'm relating to the world around me? How do I see its beauty? You can start to identify the answers to these 3 areas and begin building a picture of your authentic self and who you are.
Yeah, and then once you have that picture, how do you bring that to the table? Like, what's that implementation piece look like?
I think the biggest part, just for me personally, has been to really examine those things without judgment. I know I said that kind of already, but in order to bring them out to the table and let them live, I feel like a lot of people can get stuck behind this judgment, like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, I shouldn't think that way, I shouldn't see the world that way. They get disappointed in the answers that come up. And I, as an encouragement to myself and others that are starting this journey, it's really allowing those things to just be real. Acknowledge them, validate them for what they are, and know that letting them out into the world and be real allows you to really take a step into shaping them in the way that you see best and the way that you want to. And so for me, it starts with awareness. If you can say it, identify it, and then know the next time that you're out and about, I guarantee you the things that you wrote down and the things that you identified are going to come right back to mind, and you're going to say, oh, there it is again, or oh, I felt that again, or oh, that was what I thought again. And so that's where you can really start to change those behaviors.
Yeah, oh, that's so good. And I think obviously when we're talking about authenticity, being real has to be part of that. That's you know what it means, but doing it without judgment of yourself. I think that's huge because, gosh, I've never really thought about the fact that we judge it, meaning we then want to look a different way. Or, I mean, that part is obviously, that happens all the time, and no matter where you are, I think, especially with social media and wanting to present a certain face to the people you're around, but then having that compassion on yourself to not judge what the realness is will help you be most real.
Totally, exactly.
Because even to yourself, even when you're not presenting it to other people, you still want to come across a certain way. I think we all expect a lot of ourselves, and that's a good thing. We should want to strive to be better consistently, but we're not going to start like that usually.
Totally.
So that's
You have
so
to
important.
Identify the starting point and know where you're working from, and also just realize and acknowledge that it's not all bad.
Yeah, so good. So what are some things you can share with us that are common mistakes or misconceptions that you see in this space? Yeah,
I think in light of what we've been talking about, one of the key things is that you can do it all by yourself. Like, you can achieve it all. And that's just not true. You need people around you. And I think especially as you are faced with these challenges and hit with different decisions from all different arenas, it's really, really important that you surround yourself with good people that you can trust, that know you, and so they can handle even your bouts of, those reactions or things that might be less than desirable, and they can really speak truth back into you and remind you of who you are. And so I think the misconception that you can do it all is a big one that I would call out first. And then I think one of the other ones is that a lot of people talk about social entrepreneurship and the give back model and all of these different things, and it's kind of this sexy thing right now to be an entrepreneur and this whole wave of that. And so I feel like it's not always easy, and it is going to be challenging, and you are going to be faced with a lot of decisions that might be really, really tough and difficult for you. And so that's where this core of really remembering who you are is so important, because when you find yourself in those tough spots and you need to be reminded of the fact that, why did you start this in the first place? Why were you motivated to do this? What was your core heart in starting these initiatives and starting these, common good advancing ideas and movements? And so I would say that those would probably be some of the areas I would say I see most of the misconception, that it can all be done by you and you alone, and that this is going to be just an easy breezy.
Yeah. It's super sexy. The do good stuff, it's cool. It's so cool, but it's still a real business that you have to do. You still have these steps that you have to take that are kind of the nitty gritty. It's funny because I talk about that a lot with just the basics of business. This isn't the super sexy part, but if you don't have that foundation, then you're gonna be setting yourself up for some heartache, I think. So.
Yeah, and I think attached to that, one of the interesting things that I've experienced too with a lot of our participants is there's this idea that, well, I didn't go to business school, and so therefore I don't know what I'm doing, I can't do it. And so I think a part of that as well is like the great reason why a lot of these videos exist and why they're so helpful is because you don't have to go to business school, and it's often better that you didn't go to business school. And so there's a bit more openness to explore and try and experiment and just play around, and then there's all sorts of really awesome resources out there that can really help you with that side of things. This is the business practical side, and you can really focus on the heart and the good side of it.
Yeah, I love it, and it's amazing to see because I think you guys will span so many different places, which is needed, and it's going to be, just the impact of the wave that you're going to make, it's really, really cool and exciting to see. So if people want to connect with you and with Fieldwork, how can they do that?
Yeah, they definitely can go on our website, so fieldwork.io, FLDWRK.io, no vowels. They can reach out there no vowels, everybody. Then we can get back to them.
I loved watching this footage back and being able to see myself have these big realizations in the midst of our conversation. That's how you know you're really with someone brilliant, right? That and who can just reference books and titles at the drop of a hat. She really knows her stuff. And I hope if you're like me and you don't naturally tend to go towards self-work, that this encourages you to check it out. It's really important. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them my way. If you like this episode, especially if you know of other people who are also using business for good, please share it with them. And don't miss a thing by signing up for Defining Good updates, tools, and free resources you can't get anywhere else on defininggood.com. Remember, as an entrepreneur, you have a unique voice and a distinct circle of influence. So you can choose to ignore it, or you can use it to change the world. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.
Well, you want.
Sheesh. Perfect.